Here we go. Alicia, Anita, welcome. Welcome. Welcome, everybody. Okay, I got a simulcast here. I'm on LinkedIn. I am on Facebook. And I'm on TikTok. So, Anita, yes, I had a wonderful weekend. We are having a simulcast here, and we're going to talk about saying goodbye when sometimes we have to say goodbye, and it's really a surprise. But I'm smiling, but it's really hard. So I'm at Greg's house right now. He's in the other room, and so anyway, saying goodbye. This is what I want the topic to be today, and it's not what you think. It's not what you think when I say goodbye. It happened. My ex-husband is in hospice, and we were married for 10 years. And yeah, he's doesn't have long to be here. And I have two children, and I had my two children are from that marriage. We've been apart over 46 years now. But and he's had his life, and I've had my life, and we parted ways. We did have a 50th class reunion, and my kids went there, and so we were kind of there, like kind of as a family. But he is six months older than me, and he's not going to be here on the planet long. So I want to talk a little bit about that marriage, what happened, and a little bit about who he was and who I was, and what happened to that marriage. And I just sent a video. I just sent him a video. Greg mentioned that today. He says, "Why don't you send a video to your ex?" My daughter is sitting in his deathbed, and send a video to him and to tell him to thank him. And it's really interesting because I did have a lot of things to thank him for. We were married for 10 years. We were kids. And I'll tell you the reason that I chose him was I grew up in a family full of men who were very patriarchal and very narcissistic. And, and I had the honor of being with him, and he didn't have a mean bone in his body. I'll tell you, he never had a mean bone in his body. And when I was young, you're not gonna believe this, but when I was young, I used to have a really bad temper. I had a really bad temper. And I think I had a bad temper because in my family, it was acceptable. How many of you have ever been around people who have bad tempers? Tell me if you've been around someone that had bad tempers. How many of you have been around someone that's had a bad temper and been affected by it? If you grow up in a house, Anita, when you grow up in a house and that's how you express anger, then that's how you learn. You have to, Lori? Yeah, so you as a little kid, I learned, oh, this is when you're angry, then, this is what you do. You lose your temper. And thankfully, I've learned, I don't do that anymore. It takes a lot to get me angry, and I'm not going to lose my temper. But you lose your temper, you're full of rage, and you say things and all of that. And I grew up in a family like that, and that's how you're mad, that's what you do. And my ex-husband, his name is Joe. I want to say was Joe. He was very, very different. He was very, very mild-mannered and never had a mean thing to say about anybody. So that's why I chose him, because it's like, wow, this is a guy. There's a guy, and he's not, going to be angry or mean or try to in any way try to let me see if I can have comments from Facebook. And I just knew that I wanted someone. Oh, thank you. I knew I wanted someone who wasn't going to be angry. I wanted someone. Hi, Jeanette. How are you? We have someone from Facebook on. So I didn't want to be. Hi, Tara, Anita. Hello, Lori. So I wanted someone who wasn't going to be angry and mean, and that's why I married my husband. And he was a little slow. I guess I could say that he was a little slow. I'm glad to hear that, Jeanette. He was a little slow, and so now that you know more about it, he probably was on the spectrum. But people on the spectrum, they have a different kind of personality, and they may not be socially adept, but they're smart. They can be very smart. So when my husband and we got married, and we didn't have children right away. Oh, thank you. This is one of my Christmas gifts from Greg. And I've worn it. And so he got me these shirts because so we got a blazer for me for Christmas, for work. And then he wanted me to get shirts and a vest, and he got all this stuff. And so I had these shirts, but I don't iron. I don't iron. So Greg says, when are you going to wear the shirts? And I said, well, I need you to iron them for me. So he used to iron his shirts. We took them to the laundry. So he took my shirts to the laundry. And I had a talk on Friday. So I wore the white shirt, and I wore the blue shirt a couple of times. I wore it on a date. He's going to say something when he sees me wear the blue shirt. He said, I've had it since Christmas, and I'm just wearing it. But anyway, he went and took them to the cleaners and had them all pressed for me. So now I'm wearing my blue shirts. So anyway, going back to my husband, because I only married once. I never did remarry. I never remarried, and Greg is the first serious relationship I've had. It's been over 46 years. And, and I never really got serious about anybody at all. Anyway, well, of course, a lot of that was raising kids by myself. But anyway, so going back to my ex-husband, so we got married, and it was during the Vietnam War, and a lot of our friends were being drafted, and of course they were sending our young men, I'm not going to say who, our young men to the front line of Vietnam. And so he went to school full time. He did like what Muhammad Ali did at that time. It was like, I'm a full-time minister. And so he got a deferment. So he was a full-time student, really. And so he got a deferment from going into the military. So we moved to Chicago, and we had a little apartment, and we called it Love on a Rooftop, because it was just this little apartment, and the bed came down out of the wall. That's our room. It was one room, and it had the bed come out the wall, and then there was a table and chair on the side, and this little bitty kitchen. And we paid $26 a week. I remember we paid $26 a week in our little apartment, and we called Love on a Rooftop. And he went to school full time, and I worked full time. I was basically the breadwinner, and I went to school at night. So we were very ambitious, and we really wanted to have a good lifestyle. And one thing led to another, and then eventually we were in Chicago, because we lived in this suburb, and this little suburb was really, I just said, everybody who lives in this little suburbs moved to this other little town, and they never really expand. So I wanted to expand. So we moved to Chicago. And so we lived in Chicago, and we had our little apartment, and he went to school during the day, and I worked during the day. And I got my first job that I was coder. Then I got my second job, and then I was a um, switchboard operator. And how many of you have ever seen, because you're all young, many of you young, the switchboards where you used to put the plugs in? Anybody ever seen that where you push the plugs into the switchboard? No, has anyone ever seen that? Has anybody ever seen the switchboards that you plug in? You have, Anita, in the movies, right? So I actually worked doing that. I was like working as doing a switchboard operator. And you know what I'm talking about, Tara? So that's what I did. And that was the only job in my whole life I ever quit, because it was like, it was so busy, and it was a real estate thing, and you had to take any call that went out and anything that called in had to go through the switchboard. So you were doing this all day long. You'd be doing the switchboard and doing the switchboard and doing the switchboard. And then my chest was hurting. My chest was hurting so bad because I was so stressed. And when I was young, I had a lot of stress issues. I was very, very stressed all the time. How many of you have ever had a time in your life, or maybe you might still have, where you have chest pains or you break out or things like that because you're stressed? Anybody besides me? Anybody have like stress where your body can't handle the stress? And you have, Anita, bright eyes. You have had that. So I was working as this switchboard operator, and like I said, my husband was going to school full time, and I was doing the switchboard, and they were like barking at me. They were real estate. They weren't nice. And hi, Lynn, how are you? Hi, Jackie. And so my chest was hurting, and I went to the doctor, and the doctor said, whatever you're doing, you have to stop it, because you're I was like 18 or 19 years old, and I was all stressed out. So I went, and so he gave me some pills to help me with my stress. And then I went back in there, and I was doing it in the middle of the day, and then somebody yelled at me. I got up, I went to the president's office, and I said, I can't do this. I'm sorry. I gotta go. It was in the middle of the day. That was the only job. I don't recommend you do that, but that was the only job that I literally could not to deal with it, because it was so stressful to me. It was so stressful, and it was like my health was involved. And when I was younger, it's very interesting now, because I look at how calm I am now and how I deal with life. And I have a spiritual, like I meditate and I do things, but I know now, my nervous system was jumping like this all the time. I was nervous and stressed all the times. So I always had, I'd break out, I'd have, chest pains, I'd have all these things. And it was just because I hadn't learned how to take care of myself, number one, had no idea. And I was very stressed, and I didn't know how to deal with it. And I just, push, how many, when you get stressed, you push yourself through, and you just kind of like, almost like you slap yourself, like, get with it. You can't be stressed. How many of you, when you get stressed, you try to push your way through it? Say me, if you have ever like been stressed, and instead of saying, what do I need to do to stop being stressed? What do I need to change? We just kind of slap ourselves around. How many have done that? You've done it. So like I said, I look now, and my ex-husband was on the spectrum. But here's some things that happened, that really happened. It was crazy. So one thing was, one night, we were in a car. He had to get the car fixed. And so we were going up this back road, and there was we're like in this rural place in Chicago, suburb of Chicago. And we were going around the curb, and, they called it dead man's curve, because it was just like you couldn't see around it. But coming from the other directions were 2 or 3 young men, and they were on a motorcycle, and they were racing around this curve. And they didn't know if a car was on the other one. They were just being reckless teenagers. And so what happened was, one of the boys, his motorcycle went out of control, and his motorcycle skidded straight into our car. And you on deployment, Tara? Uh-huh. Okay. 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 Yep. So yeah, the stress, you have to, like, this is what you have to do, because you have to understand it's your nervous system. So this motorcycle ran into the front of the car, and all we could hear was the beep of the horn of the motorcycle. It was going, "Ah," and I went crazy. Oh my God, what's going on? We hit, this guy ran. He literally, if we had moved the car, he came in our lane, he skidded like almost sideways into our car. And it would have shown that it was his fault, that he ran it, that he was running in our car. But we were there sitting in the car. I'm like, oh my God. So my first thing is, wow, we should get out and see if the boy is dead or whatever. But like I said, my ex-husband, we were married at the time, was on the spectrum. He put the car in reverse and went around the guy. He didn't know whether he was dead or what. He just went around and started racing away from the scene of the accident before the police could get there. And I'm in the car and I'm like, oh my God, what's going, and I'm like a mess. Oh my God, what's going on? Oh, what are you doing? What are, and he's mad. He was like a madman. So he drives down this bumpity road in the dark, and somebody was following us, and he gets in the car and he says, get out the car. And I'm like, okay, and I get out the car and we're running. And then some guys that saw the accident and saw him run away from the accident followed us. And so they were running after us. And then my husband said, lay down. Like lay down. And like lay down, like this, like in the fields. So I lay down, because you're in shock. I was just totally in shock. And these guys were running, and then they ran over me like I was a rock or something. They didn't know it was me. There was running on someone, but there was a guy in the car who was supposed to help with the car fix, because we was buying a part for the car, and they caught him. He was trying to run away, and he said, "Come on out, Joe. They got us." And so then we had to get out the car. But I tell you, these were the kind of situations that when I was married to my husband in the very beginning, we had these situations that the things were, it was like crazy. How do you get in an accident, run away from the scene of the accident, then tell me to lay down, spread eagle in the thing so nobody could find us? And anyway, it caught up with him. But those were the kind of things. His judgment was not very good, and literally, unfortunately, his judgment was not good most of his life. So here he is. He's 6 months older than me. He can't walk. I guess he can't put on shoes. He's he now he can't even eat, and they're like giving him strained food, and he's laying there, and the decisions he's made It doesn't take them any time. Then they found somebody else. I'm sorry, Facebook and LinkedIn, it went out offline, but you're back here. Yeah, so they don't waste any time. Yeah, yeah, that happens. Like they don't waste any time. And a woman, she'll be by herself forever. Like I had 2 kids and all of that, and I didn't, wasn't thinking about finding someone else, but he got married right away. He moved out and he got married like right away. And how many of you? I'm like a bald eagle follower. I guess they call us featherheads. How many of you know about the bald eagles, Jackie and Shadow? How many of you have ever heard about the? He already had her. Yeah. Yep. 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 How many have heard about the birds? The bald eagles that live in I forgot where it is. Is anybody on here have been following the eagles, the bald eagles? Anybody? Okay. I don't know how I got involved, but I've been involved watching these bald eagles, Jackie and Shadow. Nobody on here but me? Has anybody watched you said yes, you have watched them? Okay, so Jackie died. She was like 15 years old, and they had a nest in what is it? What is the forest where they had the birds? You live in LA, Mignon. Okay, so you've heard of the bald eagles. And Jackie and Shadow, they have a camera right in their nest. So we got to see them have eggs and raise their chicks and feed their chicks. We've seen them fight. We've seen this whole thing. But Jackie was sick for a while, and then she got sick, and then she died last week. And they had her in captivity, and they were trying. People paid $350,000. People contributed $350,000 to these places to help them heal Jackie, because they wanted Jackie to be able to go back in her nest. But she didn't make it, and she died. And Shadow has already got his new eagle woman, a young, and she's young. Have you all followed that too? So it's like even the birds, the men. Jackie just died, and he's moved on. I was looking like, yep, that's right. They just move on. So that's what happened with my husband. We were married, and then I was there by myself with 2 kids, and he had moved on. And he, like I said, I now will give him grace, but he didn't provide for our children. He didn't pay child support. I took him back then. They didn't make them pay child support. So I took him to court twice, and he ended up never paying child support. So that meant that I was responsible for our 2 planned children. And I eventually moved to California with my children. I said, well, I'm going to move my kids. But I was very, very bitter. And it's terrible, 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 terrible. The worst thing you can do to yourself is be bitter. How many of you have been like bitter about something in your life? Like something was unfair. Like it was unfair that I was married to someone, it didn't work out, and he's remarried on to another relationship. And there I am with 2 small kids. They were 2 and 5 when we divorced. And he never had any part in raising my children or paying for the children at all. So I was very, very angry. I was angry. I was so angry. How many of you have been in a situation that's unfair and then you get angry? You're 66, Mignon? Okay, I'm 77. Oh my God. Same situation, Jackie? Bridget, don't be, yeah, but I didn't know what I know now. I was in my early 30s, and I didn't have a spiritual connection, and I was just struggling, and I was just so bitter. Hello, Marie. How are you doing? So yeah, like beating yourself up, like what was I thinking? The whole thing. So I was like, this isn't fair. Have you been in life? You say this is not fair. How many of you like this is not fair? Thank you, Mignon. How many of you like been in a situation and it's not fair and you're angry that it's not fair? Kara, yeah. Like it is not fair. And so therefore I wasted many, many years being angry about all the things I had to do. I had to work 2 jobs to, like to try to make ends meet and all the struggle. He was 10 years older than you. He lied about his age and prior children, Jackie. Yep. Well, we were like, school, sweethearts from school, but and I didn't think that I was going to end up divorced, but I did. And I'm not saying that I didn't make any mistakes. So one of the things, hi Lisa, one of the things when I sent the video to him today to say goodbye, basically, I apologize for anything I did to hurt him. I know, hi Lisa, I know that my ex-husband never really got over me. Even though he was with all these other women, he never got over me. And whenever we would, he would see me, he'd say, Pamela, I always loved you. I always loved you. I never stopped loving you. And, and I'm like, get away from me. Because I didn't really, to be honest, I didn't love him like that. I didn't. I mean, I married him and I was, we had a good marriage, but I didn't. Tara, of course he did. But, I was mad, and years later, and then I moved to California. So he couldn't, even if he was going to see, he wasn't seeing his kids. He wouldn't visit the kids. He wouldn't provide for the kids. And so I felt fine. I'm moving to California from Chicago, which is far away from Chicago. If he wants to see his kids, he can come here. And he didn't see them for 25 years. And he went from one relationship to the next. So total, he had like 7 relationships, and he had two other kids. And my daughter, when my son was living in Taiwan and he came to the US and we were going to go visit my daughter, I made amends. Like sometimes that you had a part in things. I'm not saying it was all my fault, but it certainly I had a part, because it takes 2 people to tangle, right? So you can blame them all you want, but that there were things that you did. So what I did was I knew he was like in a bad financial situation. So I said, you could come and see your kids and your grandkids for the first time, and I'll buy a round trip ticket. So you could come to North Carolina. We were at my daughter's. You left Albany, Georgia. You left Albany, Georgia, Mignon. And then, I bought a round trip ticket for him to come to see his kids for the first time in 25 years and to see his grandkids, because they were teenagers by then. So anyway, we did do that. We flew him here to North Carolina, and it was kind of like a reunion for the first time in 25 years, and helped, especially my daughter. My daughter really was affected by her not having a father. And so, it was kind of like sometimes you just like, you make an amends, that's the best you can do, and then you move on. So when he was there, he was trying to sit in the car. He was in the car, and I told my son, do not let him sit in the front seat. You sit in the front seat. Make sure he sits in the back seat, because I know he was gonna go, I love you, Pam. I always love you. I love, whatever. And like I said, he's on the spectrum. And so he doesn't have any filters. He didn't have any filters. He just had told me, like, I still love you. And yeah, it does, Lisa. It does. And it really helped my daughter. So my daughter is there at her dad's bedside. And it is excruciating to me because, he wasn't there for her. He wasn't there for her. And it really affected her in a very negative way, very bad way. And now he's dying and she's at his bedside. She can't help herself. So she has gone there. She went there the first time with her brother. She saw how bad he was. So then she went back a second time. And so she was there the second time. And I said, honey, and she came back and she was all distraught. She got in a car accident, because it's a lot on her nervous system to be in that situation with her dad. He doesn't have anybody to take care of him. His wife is crazy and he's laying there. He can't, nobody, he's in a nursing home. So nobody's really taking good care of him. He doesn't have anybody there to take care of him. And so she's watching, this is her father. And my kid said this was so hard to see our father that, that he's in this condition and he's like in this almost in poverty and he's unable to take care of himself. He has nobody there at his bedside. And so anyway, she's there now. She's there. She went back. I was looking at her. You know how you have in your phone, you can see where people are? I said, she's back in Illinois. And I texted her. I said, honey, are you still, you back in Illinois? And she said, I'm here. And I said, how long are you going to be there? She said, I don't know. Your dad was never in your life when he passed away. You had so many mixed emotions, Anita. Okay. It's hard, isn't it? So, I'm like, for my daughter, I lost my dad. My dad was 93 though, she never had a dad, really. She never really had a dad. And now she has her dad, but she's sitting next to him, watching him die. So, as I'm talking about it, my chest, everybody talking about nervous system, my chest is hurting. But I was here with Greg and I woke up in the middle of the morning and I was thinking about my ex-husband. And, he just wasn't a mean person. He didn't have a lot of sense. My father, like I said, he was on the spectrum. I realize now, because my father said about him when I was marrying him, he said, he doesn't have sense enough to come in out the rain. And a lot of the decisions he has made in his life are a result of that. When my husband and I were married, we did very well. And I have a good business head. And when we were married, we bought a house. I mean, we were like 28. We had a big house. We had a fenced yard. We had fence. We had Thunderbirds. I had furs. I had diamonds. We had a business. We had employees because I'm a good business person. And as long as he did what I said do, which he was a hard worker, and he was a very hard worker, we just kept getting better and better. And we were really wealthy, wealthier than we've been since then. So together, we had accumulated a lot of wealth and success together. We had a beautiful home. My daughter had ballet lessons. My kids went to private school. He and I would go on vacations, and he was very, very good to me, as long as he was. But he was like totally here. And then he went way over there and he couldn't get back here once he got over there, out in the world. And so that's why I had to leave the marriage, because I realized I could not subject myself nor my kids to what was going on. So, I guess my chest is hurting because, whew, I'm feeling my feelings. You kind of move on. It's been 46 years. It's been 46 years. But he was just never a mean person. And when I went to our 50th class reunion, he was there. And I mean, we had a lot of good times together. Like we went horseback riding together, we played tennis, we would go away for the weekend to resorts. Um, we were very successful. We had a beautiful home. We used to have these parties. we had like a real like we're in our 20s, and we had this beautiful house, 2 stories, and we would have these parties, and we would put on these shows. We would like sing um, along with. I guess right now it'd be karaoke, but back then it wasn't karaoke. They hadn't invented karaoke, but we would have these parties, and we would come, and some people would dance, and we would have these really nice parties at our house, and we had like we had a lot of family dinners and things. We like had to make homemade ice cream and barbecue ribs, and I wasn't a vegetarian then, and make barbecue ribs on the barbecue pit, and have the kids play out on the swing. We belonged to a swimming thing, and it was a time in our lives, and it was a good time in our life. And when you have good times in your life, when you're young, you think it's going to last forever, and it didn't. So, I woke up this morning. I guess I woke up at like 4 o'clock, and I was thinking about my ex-husband. I'm here at Greg, so I'm all cuddled up with my honey. And later I told him I was thinking about my ex-husband. I was telling, because I've been telling him about what's going on. And he says, why don't you make a video for your ex-husband? Like, he's barely coherent. My daughter is sitting there, and she says, "What, you could make a video for him, and he probably would like to hear from you." And I was like, "Really? You think so?" And he said, "Yeah." So I mean, that he suggested. I didn't think of it. So I texted my daughter. Yeah, he's in Chicago, Lisa. Yeah, and my daughter's in Chicago with them. She lives in North Carolina, but she's at her dad's deathbed. And so I texted my daughter, and I said, Greg suggested that I do a video for your dad to thank him for the marriage and I had 2 kids. I wouldn't have 2 kids, and to thank him for the good years we had. We did have good years. We had good years together. And so I did. I did a video just before here. And I texted my daughter first. I said, should I, Greg suggested that I send a video to your dad to say goodbye and thank you. And do you want to, what is he doing out there? Greg is outside on the pool, watering his plants. And so I did. I went, I made the video and I sent it to my daughter. And I just said, I want to thank you. You were a good father. And when we were together, he was a good father. I was left with all the things that he didn't do for so long. And now, I think about, I can remember we had a good marriage. We did have a good marriage. And, and it makes me sad that his end is like this, and if my daughter wasn't there, she didn't really have a life with him, he'd be there laying in this place with nobody overseeing and dying by himself. So I don't know if she's going to stay there until he dies, but, nobody was there for him until she came. So, God provides for children, right? And so it just made me think about, that our path and our journeys kind of go here and there. Here I am, like when I compare my life to my ex-husband's life, it's night and day, right? So there's a story about what happened, because when you're young, especially back then, they didn't give women credit for anything. All of this, I know now, all of the success, our homes and our cars and our travel and our wealth was all due to me. It was all due to me because I'm a very assertive and motivated businesswoman. And back then, because it was a patriarchal society, my dad, all them, they said, "Oh, Joe just spoils her. She just, when now then they're not going to be married, she's going to fall flat on her face because he just spoiled her. Well, I was the brains of the business. I didn't even realize it for years later. So anyway, my ex-husband's father, because what happened is, I don't know how many of you've had that, but if your husband or whatever, if he marries somebody else, they forget about you. You're like history. So he had like 8 sisters, and there were 8 of them. They just ignored me and my 2 kids. We were just there. Nobody paid us any attention. Nobody visited, nobody anything, because, oh, our brother has gotten remarried and now this is his new wife and this is who we're going to be with. So his father, bless his soul, decided to come visit his grandchildren and, visit us. So he said he called and came to visit. Well, he came to my house, and, now I'm not with my ex-husband anymore. And I'm living in a colonial house with a beautiful car and a maid and custom draperies. And I'm living in this house, parquet floors. I'm living in this beautiful house. And my ex-husband is living a few blocks away, maybe a mile or 2 away, with broken screens, cars in the yard, all kind of crap. And so the father, like, oh my God, looking at how my kids were living with the maid and all that, and how his son was living. And he got to see, it vindicated me, because they all thought that my ex-husband was providing for me, and I have been the one who was providing for me. So that was an experience that a lot of times, ladies, we don't give ourselves credit. We're not giving ourselves credit. All those years, I never gave myself credit for who I am and what I can accomplish and my natural abilities. I'm just a natural businesswoman. I am. And I've had many businesses, and I love business. I enjoy it. I'm like 77, starting a new business. I'm just starting a new business. So, like last week, for example, I did a class on public speaking, and I speak. Like last week, I went to speak actually in person at a lawyer's, retreat, and they needed continuing education. So I can give talks that give lawyers continuing education. Well, you go there, but they don't pay you anything. They don't pay you anything. You just go there and, you're doing it out of the goodness of your heart, maybe hoping you'll get a client. Greg is outside. I just saw him watering his plants outside the backyard. So anyway, it was, what was I talking about? See, when you talk about Greg, I get flustered. It's so funny because I did not feel about my ex-husband the way I feel about Greg. I mean, I don't know what happened with me and why at my age, I got like girly love with Greg, but he makes me blush. Yeah, not being paid. So anyway, now I'm going to go and be paid. I'm going to start being paid for speaking. And, and sometimes you got to take classes and learn how to do it. But that's another business I'm starting. Like, hey, you know what? I got a goal. You all know what my goal is, right? I have a goal, 3 million. So, so I have to have multiple sources of income. But I mean, I love that sort of thing. I have someone that works for me, and all she does is go gets me speeches, give me talks. But I've been giving talks to lawyers because been talking to lawyers for all these years. But now I can have her spend the same amount of money going after talks for me to be paid. So, it's like, duh. But anyway, that's my gift. My gift is I love business. I love teaching business. I love growing a business. I mean, You know what? But a few years ago, I didn't even know how to do a TikTok video. Number one, I didn't even know how to do TikTok. But I took classes I'll take a class to learn. I didn't go. I didn't know about any of it. And I called this friend of mine and I met her. I said, "Can you meet me?" I was just like a mess. I didn't know how I was going to make a living because I had to continue to work. And I sat in the coffee shop with her, sobbing, 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 sobbing. I have no idea how to make a living. I have no idea what I'm going to do. I have no idea how to keep going on. And she said, "Do you know about Twitter?" No, I don't know about Twitter. She said, "Do you know about Clubhouse?" I don't know about Clubhouse. I mean, TikTok wasn't even here. Facebook? No. So she says, "Well, here's what you do." And so she told me what I could start doing. And I tried it. And then I took classes and then I learned. I have like 28,000 followers on LinkedIn now. And I have really established myself over these years as a speaker, advocate for lawyers. And, because I started coaching lawyers way back years ago when I was in California. And so I created a business coaching lawyers and then what the other thing to tell you is I moved to Jacksonville from California. Now in California, people know what a coach is. They pay for coaches. They expect to have a coach. But I was in Jacksonville, Florida, and I said, "Coach," they said, "What sport do you coach?" So I'm in a city where there's some Jim Crow going on here, and there's all these things, and I can't make a living. I couldn't make a living from Florida. So and this was before there wasn't Zoom. How did you do teleconferencing before Zoom? What was it called? I forgot what it was called. Um, you all remember? Tara, okay. So Tara, I opened a business. What was it called? Remember you would get on there and you would do a video call, but it was before Zoom. Who remembers? Not yet. I think I'm going to do one, Bridget. Oh, what was it called? what was it when you would get on there and you would do a video call? I can't remember. Skype. Was it Skype? Yeah. So there I was. I had never really done a video call. I started coaching lawyers, Lisa, Tara. Who asked me that? Let me see who asked me how to start coaching lawyers. So Tara. So what happened was in about 1992, I opened a coaching business in California. And so I opened this business in California, a coach, because I was just gotten trained and all that for coaching. And I opened my practice, and mostly lawyers came to my office to be coached. And I was like, well, it was open for anybody. But anyway, so that's how I ended up coaching lawyers. And so then I just kept coaching lawyers. And then I actually I became a recruiter for lawyers in Atlanta when I first came to Jacksonville. Because I'd been coaching lawyers, I was used to them. So I made a lot of money. So that was the job I told you about. I started off the job making, as a secretary, $25,000 a year. And I left there 6 years later making $260,000 a year. So, I just am very, very entrepreneurial. But anyway, to tell you, so anyway, here I was, 66 years old. And I didn't know about Twitter. I didn't know about LinkedIn. I didn't know anything. And I was sitting there sobbing in this bookstore talking about, I didn't know how I was going to make a living. And so she was telling me, well, you got to learn about LinkedIn and you got to do some posts, do 3 posts a week. I had no idea about any of that. And I knew that in Jacksonville, I was not going to be able to make a living because of the socioeconomic stratosphere here. And so I got to make a living on the video, on Skype. And this was before Zoom. And I remember I had a coach that said, you can't make a living on the video. You got to walk around the city and go around. And it was like all the efforts that I made. There's Greg out there cleaning the pool. All the efforts that I made to do things in Jacksonville just never came to fruition. So I knew I had to learn how to do it on the video. So when everybody else, when COVID came and everybody else was on the video, I was way ahead. You can start over if you need to. Say me. Learn new things. Just like always, like there are always classes that you can learn new things. You can learn anything you want to learn. I mean, look at me. I am 77 years old and I just created an app. How many of you would like to learn how to create an app? But you have to be willing to keep learning. You have to keep willing to learn. I think you're as young as your brain is. So if you will hang in there and not give up on yourself, there's all kinds of futures for you. All kinds of futures for you. Just don't give up on yourself. Anita, thank you for being our moderator. Could you put the link for the invisible rule? I do the invisible rule almost every day because I have to practice, I have to check it. And I'm telling you, every time I learn something new about myself, and I keep growing and I keep learning. Greg is there swimming in the pool while I'm watching. It's my honey. So we got our tickets for Portugal, and there's an app for the invisible rule. Let's click on it, and we looked at where we want to stay. So I have one thing. I have a talk scheduled in Portugal. So when you go to someone told me if you go to, you could travel, if you can do business, you could write it off on your taxes. So anyway, I found a talk. So I'm going to be speaking in Lisbon before lawyers in Lisbon, because I'm known all over, actually all over the world. They know that I'm a specialized in lawyer well-being. So when I put it out there that I was going to be in Lisbon and I'd like to talk to lawyers, I got a bite. So I'm going to be giving a talk in Lisbon while Greg and I are there. And once we figure out the dates, then we're going to book we're only going to be there for 9 days. Greg said, I'll go, but I'm only going to be there for 9 days. So, yeah, I love Portugal, and it's going to be so nice. I've been there by myself, but it's going to be really special to be there with somebody that I love and share something that I love. You know what I mean? So, yeah, only 9 days. I like to go there for like 2 or 3 weeks. He said, how long do you want to stay? But anyway, he is going, and he found his passport. Yeah, so it's going to be very, very nice that we're going to be able to go and be together in Portugal. So we're going to take you with us when we go. Yeah, we're going to share our trip in Portugal with you all. And yeah, I know, Bridget, something is wrong with StreamYard, and it keeps dying, and then it goes out, and then it whatever, and it comes back. So I don't know what's wrong with it today. TikTok hasn't done that. TikTok has stayed on, but the StreamYard, which I have LinkedIn and Facebook set for the StreamYard. So anyway, I'm now only doing the thing on Monday. So this is my share for the week. Get my outfits ready. Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited. We're leaving we're not leaving till September. So we got about a month. We'll be leaving on September 20th, I think. And then we come back October 2nd, I think. Yeah. But when you go there, it's really casual. And somebody said it's just mostly British people over there. I mean, you have to worry about the language because it's really very, people from England just took over the city where we're going. But anyway, so thank you all for being here. And thank you for listening to my story. I just thought I'd like to say a farewell to my ex-husband. And, probably this week, next time, I doubt if he'll be alive. And it's just hard to believe that somebody that you had children with and you had a life with for 10 years is going. And that's when you get to be my age. It's just so many people pass away. But anyway, I have a lot to look forward to. I'm at Greg's this week, and it's nice. Will I attend the services? And my foot. Okay. So to answer your questions, I may attend the services, at least I'm not sure. There probably will just be a memorial, but I may do that for my children, especially my daughter, because she's very, very emotional. And basically what's happening is she lost her father when she was 5, and now she's in her 50s, and she's losing her father again. You know what I mean? When I was telling Greg the story of when he moved out, I asked him, and we're young and silly, and I was out with, went out of town with a friend, and I told my ex-husband, I said, don't leave the house when when I'm not there, because I want to be there with the kids. But of course, what he did was he waited till I was gone, and then he moved out the house, and then the kids were all upset. And as he was pulling out the driveway, my daughter jumped on the hood of the car, screaming and hysterical that he was leaving. And that was her last memory of her father. So that. Now, Tara, my foot is still swelling. It's not as bad as it was, but I think I'm going to get some acupuncture. I don't know what I need to do, because, my foot swells at the end of every day in my, and it doesn't hurt anymore, but it just swells. And so, especially, we're going to be going to Portugal, we're going to be traveling and walking, and then my foot is swelling up on, every day. So I gotta find out how to try to get that. Western medicine has not been able to solve it. Yeah. So yeah, Tara, how's your hip, by the way? How's your hip doing? How's your hip? Yeah, you do. You do walking. Everything you do is walking. Yeah, I don't eat. I'm a vegetarian. I eat mostly vegetables and things like that, so I don't really have salt, dream girl. But I don't know. It's like my left foot. It's just it is. Oh boy, Tara, this has really been. This has been an ordeal for you, hasn't it? Wow. Wow. Yeah, I don't know what is going on with it, Bridget. It's still painful. My foot stopped hurting, but you don't go back to active duty until October 1st. So, are you going to have to go back with a bad hip to active duty? Will they give you like light duty to do or something like that? What will they do? Because if your hip, this is the end of August, you got 1 month, really basically 1 month and a half. I don't know if your hip is going to be ready by then. Well, what if it isn't, Tara? What will they do then? What will happen if your hip isn't ready yet? They may extend it. Okay. Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's going to mend that fast, because if you're still having pain and rehabilitation now, when Greg had his he had a hip replacement, he said it was really easy. So yours was very extensive. He said it wasn't a problem at all. So when I'm hearing about all that you're going through, your hip was really bad. I don't know what the difference is. You had a hip arthroscopy. You not had a hip replacement? You didn't have a hip replacement? That's not a replacement. What is that? They like kind of repair your hip? Oh, 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 oh. That's probably more painful and more invasive than actually having the hip replaced, isn't it? Wow. Wow. And shave the bone down. Oh, yeah. So what you had is very, very invasive. Yeah, I have to tell Greg that. I'm going to see. It was a hip arthroscopy. Okay. But anyway, two things that we want to make sure that, we take care of ourselves, one. And number two, don't give up on yourselves. And realize that if you take care of yourself, it's just like my ex-husband. He's 6 months older than me, but take care of himself. And, now here he is, 6 months older than me. He can't walk. He can't do anything. And, and he's dying. So anyway, life is full of, well, they say life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. So anyway, you all be blessed. Thank you. You all be blessed. I mean, it's really my daughter's loss, but you know, you don't really know how you feel until, it's like there and you realize, oh my God, this man that fathered my children, and, that I had my very beginning of life as an adult was with him. And now and it's not just his dying, it's just him dying in poverty and not having anybody there and laying there in this bed in a terrible nursing home, and nobody, if my daughter wasn't there, he'd be just there laying there dying by himself. So anyway, thank you all. Thank you all for joining me tonight. And I will see you next week. Okay, bye-bye. Thanks for coming, everybody. We'll see you. Bye-bye. Bridget, thanks for being here. I'm sorry that the whatever was going on with StreamYard affected our live today. But take care. Bye-bye.